Welcome to the Radiate Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Christy Clemens Hoffman. Each week we will discuss tools, tips, and ways to radiate your best life ever, interviewing practitioners, authors, and luminaries to help you on your path. Wellness, joy, peace, abundance. What do you want to radiate? Welcome back to the Radiate Wellness Podcast. Today we radiate Sass with Paulina Tenner, who's the author of Laid Bare, a story about her experience with burlesque and all that there is to that, as well as being a CEO, thought leader, and investor. How are you doing today, Paulina?
Sassy. I'm excited. I'm so happy to be in the show. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. You've got quite an interesting background. My goodness. And Laid Bare talks about it all. Can you tell it? Yeah, just let's jump in.
For sure.
Laid Bare about?
Yeah, so, for quite some time, I had this split personality, shall we say. I was this kind of entrepreneur, investor, relatively serious professional person during the daytime. And I was a burlesque showgirl at night. So that went on for a couple of years, and I really loved every second of it. And it was kind of titillating knowing that, what I'm going to get up to in the evening while I was doing business, and sometimes sitting in boring meetings during the day. And for a while, it was exactly what I wanted. But then I just thought, you know what? I want to come out. I want to just be honest with the business world that this is what I'm doing. This is the entirety of me. This is my wild, unapologetic side. And if someone doesn't like it, not my problem. So I kind of did a bit coming out ceremonies of sorts when I got invited to do a TEDx talk in 2014. And what I did, I was speaking as a businesswoman, but I had images of me as a stripper in the background on the projector. And I was like really making fun of myself. So I was like, shh. Like, you can't tell anyone because this will ruin my career. I was like that. And then it went down so well, I thought, let's write a book about it,
Oh, well, absolutely. And your book is really part business leadership, but also part your background, which yes. I think is brilliant. So what did you bring from burlesque into the boardroom, as it were?
Oh, loads. There's loads that I brought from Boardroom to Burlesque, and loads that I brought from Burlesque to Boardroom, actually. So, talking about the first one, I changed entirely as a leader, because I used to be very much in my kind of masculine leadership center, focused, driven, ambitious, da-di-da-di-da-di-da, And what was missing was my feminine juiciness and sass, which is what we're talking about today. Right. And I unleashed that as a performer. I tapped into my creativity again, into my rebelliousness, into my, electric, juicy, controversial kind of presence. And I brought that back into my kind of business persona, so how I showed up as a leader. So in the book, I talk quite a bit about, particularly in the second part of it, integration of the feminine and masculine side of our leadership, which we all have, whether we're women or men or different gender. And it's about, I think wholesome leadership is about being able to tap into both, whatever the situation requires, and like really be masterful both as a doer, like the masculine part, as well as just simply, being, responding, listening, accepting, surrendering, which is more the domain of the feminine part. So I think it really radically changed me, actually.
Okay, so it's getting really hot in here, Paulina. You look awesome.
Thank you.
We had to, just for anybody who's watching on YouTube, we did have to ditch the jingly jacket because it was creating a jingly noise. But,
I undressed as I used to do on stage. I'm not going to take any more right now, but if you ping me directly at Paulina Tenner, I can send you some juicy burlesque videos.
oh, well, hey, I think that is a temptation. That is beautiful. Yeah, it's not that kind of show. So
Maybe you should change the format,
yeah, we could change the format. I don't know if anybody wants to see me take my clothes off, but So there you go. We can ping you. So taking burlesque to the boardroom and boardroom to the burlesque. I mean, it's like we all understand what burlesque is. We all understand that realm. But what type of business are you in, or were you in at the time? Or what is it that you do business-wise?
So 11 years ago, I started a company called Grant Tree. And we, as the name suggests, get government grants and government funding for businesses that are in the tech space and that are innovating in some way. So it's, a business that's doing quite well. We've got about 50 people now, and we've raised, 200 million sterling worth of government funding for our clients. So quite serious business. And, there was a day, I remember it like yesterday, when I was maybe 2-3 years into developing that business, and I was just so in my head all the time. And I was like, I'm sick of this. I just need to do something radically different right now. Or I'm just going to explode. I'm going to just, And that's when, that very day, I walked past, there used to be a club in London called Café de Paris, where they had burlesque and cabaret shows. And I just saw like a little bit of a rehearsal of one show. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to find out how to become a showgirl.
Oh my, and your publicity materials say that you were a 24-year-old virgin at the time.
Well, actually, that was a little bit later, but the fact is, I've been a virgin until 24. My background is Polish Catholic, so quite regimented. Least to say, I haven't really been in touch with my sexuality for a long time. I thought, this is something that I need to box out for that one man to, unpack on the wedding night romantically. And I had all these kind of visions as a virgin in her early 20s. And then, I just realized it's not that simple. I split off with my boyfriend I was with at the time, and I thought I would marry and give this gift of my virginity to. I split up with him. And and I just started feeling into who am I really as a woman? And is that really true to me, that my sexuality is so boxed in and reserved for just one person? Or can I share it with like a whole audience? And I decided that I can. And I did.
Well, if all of that was inside, just dying to get out, I can't imagine how that must have felt trying to bottle it all up and keep a lid on it.
So many of us do it, Christy. Like so many women are just feel that it's not decent, appropriate, whatever else, to be a sexual, sensual woman. Not just in your spare time, but also in business, because we can radiate that Sass wherever we are.
Wherever we are, absolutely. I was on vacation and I picked up in a little free library this book, and I can't remember what the title of it was to save my life, but it was written by someone who works with a lot of drag queens and talking about like going into a meeting and spreading out all of your notebooks and pens and everything to take up the most space and to make yourself just look so much bigger and just occupying in a big way the space that you have wherever you are. So I kind of
I'm going to take that tip. Yeah.
I kind of see your Sass as being that, being this bigger version of yourself wherever you are.
Absolutely. I think we all have that bigger version of ourselves, or that, Beyonce used to say that her stage persona is called Sasha Fierce. Like everybody's got that, inner sassy, maybe provocative, magnetic character. And those can be slightly different depending on what person you are, but you will have that resource of you within you. And my part of my mission is to encourage women to really kind of be their juicy, electric, magnetic selves, because the world needs it. The world needs it and just loves it.
Well, and I think, yes, the world absolutely needs us to be as authentic as possible. But also, the world needs us to be authentic. And when so many women are not living their authentic selves, that's kind of a tragedy.
Yeah, it's really sad. I think up until some point in your life, at least that's how I've experienced it, you kind of discovering. Well, you could say that you're discovering who you are all your life, but until some point in your life, you're just like, maybe early 20s, maybe even 30s, you're like, how do I create space for myself, fit in, so they want me, they accept me, they like me. And then at some point you're like, sod it, this is who I am. And by radiating to who I really am, I'm going to attract the kind of people that are my people. And I think everybody needs to make that transition from trying to fit in to really embracing the entirety of who they are, but by themselves.
Right. So when you decided you're just going to take off all your layers, figuratively and literally, what did the people around you think? Did they think you'd lost your ever-loving mind?
Good question. So I experienced a bit of both sides. So my husband and my friends, super happy for me. They could see me in my creative zone and really reclaiming my my creativity, my zest for life, really. And they were like, this is amazing. And a couple of my friends actually took up Burlesque because they were like, this is awesome. I want to do this too. My family, especially my mom, not so keen. At some point she gave me a comment of this is like a minor porn starlet, what are you doing? And I was like, I'm just being me. So I accept the fact that it's not her world, that it will never be her world. She is a professor at a university in Poland. She is a scholar. She is quite a lot in her mind, actually, as a woman, as a human being. And I just need to accept that, we're not going to meet on this particular level, and just meet her wherever I can meet her. So that's fine with me.
And so there's, not to dig too much, but that the relationship is, still kind of a good relationship, even though you're on different levels.
Absolutely. It's a fantastic relationship. And she's really keen to read my book. The only reservation she said, she's like, are there going to be some photos of you, And I'm like, there are a few photos in the midsection of the book, but I think you will like it anyway. So I'm going to give her the book. Yeah.
Oh, that is wonderful. Yeah, this book is brand spanking new. This is exciting. It's really doing a lot of publicity around it.
Yeah, I'm just working on doing a lot of speaking and promoting it, and just booked a strip club in East London for the launch party, which is going to be great. I'm going to have some pole dances.
Oh, that's
a shame you're not in London, because otherwise you'd be on my guest list.
I would love to be there, believe me.
Yeah, so it's going to be a lot of fun. And the book is officially coming out on the 26th of November, but it's available for pre-order now. So if you're liking the sound of it, go to paulinatenner.com/book and have a look at it and hopefully pre-order it. It's likely the most unusual business book you've ever read. So.
Oh my gosh. Yes, this is so. I'm looking at your table of contents. So, first of all, the part one is the naked truth about building a transparent business. Could we fit any more metaphors in there?
Not really, not really.
So, it's getting set up, reclaiming the goddess, reclaiming this kind of goddess energy, right?
Yeah.
F teal, be nude. What is that about? F teal,
Oh,
nude.
yeah. So I explain it in the book. So actually, my company, Grantry, even though it may sound a little bit boring because it's in financial services and all that, it's quite interesting in terms of how it's set up. So in it, people actually set their own salaries, which is very radical, but we've decided to implement that as well as financial transparency, meaning that people have access to company accounts, they know what the company is spending money on, what's our financial situation, etc. And we decided to implement that to really empower people to make decisions for themselves, obviously considering the job market and other roles they could be, applying for, what they're actually worth on the job market, and to involve them in kind of some strategic thinking and decisions around the business.
Did you know that Radiate Wellness is more than just a podcast? That's right. We're also a comprehensive, holistic wellness practice. Find out about our services, practitioners, and upcoming events at radiatewellnesscommunity.com. While you're there, visit our podcast page to read more about our great guests and even donate to the podcast. If you like our podcast, you can help in other ways as well, like subscribe or follow us wherever you're listening right now. Tell a friend, a family member, or a coworker about the great content you find here. And if you wouldn't mind, please give us a thumbs up, a 5-star rating, or a positive review. Sounds like a small thing, but it really helps. You might like to know about our Facebook communities while we're at it. We have a free community, the Radiate Wellness Community, on Facebook for news and great free content. Our subscribers group is Radiate You, as in the letter U, but also, well, you. There you'll find curated replays of past classes, guest interviews, and more. And now, back to our podcast and back to our guest.
So, in answer to your question, teal, there is a framework I talk about, which is taken from the book of a really clever guy called Frederic Laloux. The book is called Reinventing Organizations, and he talks about how human organizations have evolved on par with the evolution of human consciousness. So we used to kind of have so-called red organizations, which are like, command and control type organizations, like street gangs or armies or things like that. Then, we evolved more towards what most corporations today are about. So orange organizations, which are all about shareholder value and profits and strategy and all that. And the kind of top of the pyramid are so-called teal organizations, which operate a bit like a human organism. So things are decentralized. There may be a CEO, but there are kind of independent teams that operate independently. And those organizations are really kind of much more agile, and I think much more like represent what the future holds for how we are managing ourselves and our work as human beings. So, fuck teal, be nude. Nude is a paradigm I decided as a stripper to introduce. Because we have full financial transparency and we believe in transparency, I was like, there's another layer on top of teal. And that's like, yes, embracing the kind of decentralized nature of our organization, rejecting hierarchy, but at the same time, being fully transparent. So that's it in a short.
So, nude, of course, being the color. We can buy colored tights, but then also nude as in fully transparent, like transparent in a different way. Okay, Got it. That's brilliant, actually. So in your organization, everyone sets their own salary. Do you ever take someone aside and say, "Look, honey, you need to know your own worth. You're not asking for enough."
Yes, we have nudged people to review their salary. And you're right. There will be some people who are always thinking about, like, I should be working, earning this, I should be earning that. And those are the people that are typically need to be like, you need to really manage their expectations and be like, well, consider what the company can afford, consider what's the total situation of our market, etc.
Right.
But there are people, that's right, who are less concerned about what am I being paid right now, and they're more about, how the team is performing. They're more about the bigger picture. And that's where, sometimes they need a nudge, and you need to be like, and as they see, in a transparent environment that their colleagues are raising their salaries, it's only natural that they'll start thinking, okay, like, I should do something about my pay as well.
Yeah, I can imagine, because that we come back to the kind of the divine feminine.
Mm-hmm.
And I think part of that is just not knowing our worth, not valuing or seeing our worth as valued in the greater community, right?
Yeah.
Right. So the first part of your book is all about transparency. It's about, yes, the divine feminine, bringing that goddess energy into the workplace. And then the part two, the second part of your book, is the feminine rising and leadership of the future. So can you talk about like this feminine rising in leadership?
Yeah, for sure. So like I said before, we all have like a feminine and masculine energy center, or yin and yang, we can call it, because feminine, masculine is sometimes a bit confusing because you associate it with gender.
Yeah.
So I think the goddess energy is really rising, not just in business, but everywhere in the world. And we're kind of experiencing like a second coming of the feminine, because we used to be, before the patriarchal culture started to dominate our civilization, we were very much in the energy of the goddess. Look at like ancient tribes and how they were worshipping Mother Nature, and how they were so kind of aligned with the cycles of nature, etc. And then there was the era of the patriarchy, which has been super, depleting in terms of like the resources of the earth, which has been super damaging. Not just for women, but for men as well. I mean, men have been victims of patriarchy as well, because it put them in that system where, it was all about productivity and kind of ROI, etc., etc. So I think in general, we've kind of gotten to a point where we are disillusioned with patriarchy and we're ready for something new. And that's when the space is created for the feminine energy to come back in and hopefully, pair up with the masculine energy. Because if we're just in the feminine energy, not much would get done. The masculine is about the drive, the ambition, that like getting things done. So when the two come together, it's so powerful, because you are both in the doing and in the being, in the action and in the surrender. And I'm really hopeful, actually, looking at the future, because, I'm meeting more and more really awakened leaders who are seeing that we need to not just be all about profit and shareholder value in our organizations and in business, but we need to be about wholesomeness, about how we create the types of workplaces where people really want to work. And how do we marry those two, wholesomeness, wellness of the people, looking after our people with, of course, the commercial purpose of the organization.
No, I love that. Also, in part two of your book, you bring in some fairly, pardon the pun, hardcore topics such as entrepreneurship and BDSM, as well as the horror in business. So let's start with the entrepreneurship and BDSM.
So I actually did a talk about that as well. It's really interesting. I used to have a lover. Obviously, that was after I decided virginity at 24 wasn't for me. And he said to me once that kink is like owned darkness. So darkness that you've kind of incorporated and you decided to like really embrace. And in a similar way as BDSM and kink is about exploring that dark side, giving it space to understand what it's got to bring, like in a safe environment, of course. Then, similarly, entrepreneurship is also about really getting to understand yourself as a person and embracing that dark side too. Because what I've noticed as my company grew is that it became a reflection of all my strengths, but also of all my weak points. Right. So that's why it was like, okay, the path of the entrepreneur is to really embrace your shadow, like Jung would put it as a, shadow. So there's quite a lot of parallels actually. And I remember when I was giving that talk, it was at a tech conference in Riga, Latvia, when I had 2 slides and I had on one my weaknesses as a person and on one the weaknesses of my organization. And I was like comparing and contrasting them. And I was like, this is really, the path of the entrepreneur is to really understand yourself, embrace your weakness, because all that you are is going to be reflected in what you create. Like an artist. I think being an entrepreneur is a form of art, I feel.
Oh, absolutely. And talk about being laid bare to have all of your weaknesses in your
put on display.
On display. Okay. Well, what about the horror in business? Yeah.
So there I talk about the archetype of the whore, because there is the archetype of the virgin, which is really embedded in our kind of like Western civilization, where you, what you really want to be, and that's the aspiration for many women, is this virtuous, kind of kind virgin, embodied by Virgin Mary, for example. And we have that deep in our culture, whether we are aware of it or not. And that archetype is still prevalent. I think the way a lot of parents bring up their girls, they're supposed to be innocent, they're supposed to be decent, they're supposed to be kind, all of these things that the virgin archetype basically points to. But there's also the archetype of a whore. So one that really, as we said, puts everything on display. One that's shameless, one that plays with social convention and what's acceptable, what's not. That's not afraid to be outside of the social norms. And we don't really teach girls. And actually men as well, because men have a feminine part as well, to embody that, to also be, as much as they're in their virgin, to also be in their whore as an archetype, So that's what I talk about when I talk about whore in business.
So it's
the shameless part, the part that's like really sexy, sassy, rebellious, like that's what I talk about.
Sure. Yeah. Bringing some masculinity into the feminine side as well. Right. And so I'm looking through the rest of your book, and you talked about having photos in the middle. And yes, I have to say these photos are tame in many ways. And however, there's one where you have a penis.
My favorite act. So I actually decided to there was a night titled Superheroes. So we had a challenge, all the artists performing there, to come up with an act with a superhero in it. So I was like, I'm going to be a little bit like feminist and explore, what would happen if two superheroes met and fight for the title of the last remaining superhero of the galaxy. And one of them was female and one of them was male. And they would have a conversation, who's the real one and who's the usurper. So again, quite a complex multimedia act, because what I did there, on stage, I had two superheroes talk to each other. So I had one, obviously me on stage, and one on the projector. And they were interacting. So it's quite a cool act, actually. Yeah. And at the end, they kind of got engaged in this gangster rap battle, sang to the tune of Gangsta's Paradise, and they ended up stripping to reveal who they really are. And the male character had like a big bush across the chest,
yes,
and a fake underneath the costume, and a female character. It was really funny because I had in most clubs, burlesque nudity is considered, what's considered by burlesque nudity is some nipple pasties to cover your nipples and some emergent to cover your lady garden. So what I did, I put fake nipples on top of my real nipples. And I had a big bushy triangle between my legs. So it was like a bush covering my bush, basically. And obviously the female character won the battle. Yeah.
Obviously. Well, yes,
because the guy, started waving his dick about, literally. I was doing the willy copter with my dick. It was quite fun to be able to do that as a woman. I never thought it was so much fun. And listen to this, because it was, I had this costume made by one of my friends, and it was created that the stick-on actually was created, was actually created in a way that I could rip it off. So it came off at some point. It was like the guy emasculated, losing his on stage and crying and running off stage. The woman being really practical and being well, I'm not really concerned about the title of the last remaining superhero of the galaxy because I need to go and get some shit done. So I'm going to go. And it was a nice kind of interplay of genders and stereotypes. I really enjoyed that act. It was fun, but it was complex because of the projector and the fact that how I actually executed it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it shows just the creativity, and creativity can be applied in business as well.
Absolutely.
Right? In fact, it should. Yeah. All right. So your website again, if people want to check out more about what you've got going on, want to check out Laid Bare, what is the subtitle? How business...
What the business leader learned from the stripper.
Perfect. What the business leader learned from the stripper. So your website again is? PaulinaTenner.com. Tenner as in $10. You can remember, yes. PaulinaTenner.com, and you are on Instagram at Paulina Tenner. That's me, exactly. Perfect. Thank you so much for being part of this show today. This has been fun. I loved radiating Sass with you. Oh, thank you. And I loved radiating Sass with you too. And I hope we meet again. This was an absolute pleasure. And to everyone listening, remember to, at least from time to time, tap into your inner Sass. I love it.
Radiate Wellness is a community of holistic and alternative healers and consultants based in the Kansas City area, dedicated to helping you create spiritual, energetic, and physical well-being. To learn more about our practitioners, services, classes, and events, or to schedule an appointment, Visit us at radiatewellnesscommunity.com.